What's up, friends? Welcome to SPDM TV. My name is Mike, part of the SPDM crew, and I watch a lot of TV. We talk about various TV topics, reviews, general appreciation of TV, past and new. You can follow me on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and serialized at MLHulty2452 to see what all I'm watching. This week, changing things up a little bit, and I will be talking with Kymberly Harris. Kymberly, how's it going? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Kimberly has done all kinds of different things within the entertainment industry. If you check out her IMDb page and her website, she has producing credit, she's got acting credit, she's written and directed pieces, and per her website, she's also done the acting coaching, she's done work with the theater. So, you're like a Swiss Army knife when it comes to the entertainment industry.
I love that.
So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about kind of your journey throughout the creative industries and what's kind of driven you to the point that you are today. But tell me a little bit about yourself. Start wherever you'd like about how you got to this point and what kind of drove you initially to get into the creative arts.
Well, it's such an interesting time to be doing an interview. It's just the world here in LA. We just had these apocalyptic fires, and, we have a new administration. And, I think has everything to do with, art, film, TV, theater, and I mean that's really my approach. I think it started with acting. I think 6 years old when I had my first lead in a musical.
Oh, nice, nice.
And
Which one
then
was
I went
which
to
one?
college for I had studied French and theater. And then I just always was acting, just acting, 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 acting. And I mean, really, probably 345 days a year I was
Mm.
acting. I was always acting, obsessed with it. And then when I went to New York to graduate school, I started playwriting as well. And then my acting coach asked me to coach some of her clients,
Got it. Mm.
and they were high level, very talented clients. And then I started directing theater. And then someone asked me if I had a play that I could adapt into a screenplay for them for their production. And I did that. And then they said, "Will you direct it?" And it was not even really nothing in my life has been planned. It's just always been led by inspiration. But once I got on set, it seemed like everything that I had been doing had a place to go, because when you're directing a film that you wrote, you are directing, you are writing, you are acting coaching, you are, creating the world. And so all these, like I would do in theater, so all these skills that I had been Swiss Army knifing up until that point had a place to go. So yeah, I used to feel sort of self-conscious about that because there were so many hats in a way just in my career. But now is a different moment where I feel like actors are producing and creating a lot more
Mhm.
and doing other things, So when I was coming up, it was you have to be one thing.
Yeah, and there is something to be said about that because, like you said, there is that expectation that you could just be really good at one thing, but now it's not just acting, it's can you act, can you sing, can you produce, can you write, can you do all of these different things? And that's great to have all of those different things. I can imagine at times, can't that be a little overwhelming at times to just be pulled in so many different directions about with all the possibilities out there?
I think that's just such a great question. I mean, honestly, what the overwhelm didn't set in until 2024 when the strikes happened because everything shut down. And for the first time, I wasn't being asked to do. I kind of knew. A 20-hour day was coming. Like I've been so busy this whole time. And then when that happened, then you have to stop and go, okay, wait a minute, which thing am I going to pursue? And it was almost the quiet that has been more overwhelming for
Mm.
me.
Okay.
because then I really had a choice. It wasn't something like pulling me. Yeah. So that is it's real. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's a great perspective in a way that when you're so busy and when things calm down, that's when things start to get a little bit much. And I appreciate the like the honesty and the transparency with that, particularly like during the strikes when a lot was in flux. I'm sure you don't know when the strikes are going to end, and you don't know, and from a negotiation standpoint, you don't know what you're going to get for not only the actors but the writers and directors. Those all kind of just converged at the same time, and that had to be at minimum annoying, but also at worst it's probably devastating to kind of just be caught up in all of that and hope that a good deal is reached for as many people as possible.
Yeah, and for me, I've always remained a coach and a teacher because I feel that I love doing the work and then giving and giving and giving. And so anytime I can be teaching, so for me, it's always I've had this sort of antennae out, and you can just feel people losing their jobs. People, so it wasn't only me; it was you can feel it in the whole, because really there's so much of the city that is creative, creatives. And
Yeah.
so it really does challenge you to say, okay, how can I be proactive and try to empower artists during this time? And for me, that I happily had, some workshops I could give and try to keep people creating. But what the danger is losing hope, because the executives want to make much fewer things because they don't know where the industry is going. And then only a small portion of people are that are very, very famous are continuing to work, and no one else is. And so it's disheartening. I do feel I'm you open Pandora's box here, but I
Yeah.
do feel that the films this year have been really kind of our artist revolutionary films. I think there's, and that's exciting. They feel like they have a real independent spirit, and people are of that spirit. I'm going to do exactly what I want to do and really say something I care about saying more than other years, I feel. So, that the hope comes from that. And I just hope that creatives keep hope, because it's hard to, but we have to keep going.
Well, but not only that, you brought it up that there's just so much in the world right now where the risk of losing hope is pretty great
Oh,
between everything that just happens regionally, statewide for California. I've got friends who lost everything in
oh,
those
I'm so
fires,
sorry. Yes,
and
it's
it's and
devastating.
it's and it's horrible. And then you see what's happening in our country right now, and it's very tough right now not to lose hope. But given everything that's happening now and everything that's even happened in the last 5 years between all the political turmoil, like COVID has taken its toll on a lot of different things. So I certainly hope that everything that's happened in the last 5 years and will continue to happen in at least at minimum the next four to continue to empower artists to use their voice in the platforms that they need, that people need them to.
I think there's a kind of cynicism about, oh, that's pretentious, but it's it's not. It's necessary. It's always been a primal need of culture, of society, all the way back to cave people drawing picture stories on walls. And it's, if we don't value that, and all the things you just said are, we have to take it into our own hands. We just have to. And I think that can make its way into certain films and shows and plays. And I mean, theater does it just as a practice. It always usually has its finger on the pulse of what's going on in the world. but we need a lot more. That's why I say I'm so excited about the films this year. Like, I think they're very current, and that doesn't always happen.
No,
And
no,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
right. That's absolutely true. So well, I guess let's pivot to this. Let's talk about, let's talk about some of those films and some of those, like even some of those TV shows that you've seen recently that have inspired you, or anything that has captured your attention in a way that other shows or movies haven't. So what's been out there recently that you've watched that you've really enjoyed?
I've been, really paying. I'm a Independent Spirit Award voter, so I get to pretend it's my job and just watch everything. I mean, it is my job, but even more so because there's a deadline to vote. So for me, gosh, it's there's a few. I mean, Honora really, really surprised me. I think, without giving too much away, it ended up being a very subtly feminist film, and it was about a sex worker. I mean, I'm really surprised a man made that too, because it's just so intricate what he did. I thought the acting was amazing. I loved Honora, and I've been a Sean Baker fan. I actually love all his movies, but this one, it just knocked me out. And it's so, and it's my kind of movie. I mean, it's the kind of, it's very visceral and very, performance driven and about something that is real. I loved Honora. I also loved A Real Pain.
Yeah, those.
I was surprised how good I thought that was. I mean, I knew I'd enjoy it, but I thought it was great. I thought the writing was just amazing, and the dynamics between the two were deeply funny to me, even though it was,
It gets heavy at times with their relationship. And once you kind of realize Kieran Culkin, who is outstanding in that, and I
amazing.
greatly enjoyed his performance. Doesn't say That's not to say that Jesse Eisenberg isn't great in it as both the director and the a performer, but there is something about Kieran Culkin's performance when he talks about his relationship with his grandma, and how she's the only one who really understands him, and how he puts up this strong facade in front of this group because he wants things to be real, but then he's afraid to face his real life too. And once you find out what happens to him, it's heartbreaking that he made that choice. And I'm not going to spoil it because it recently just came out on streaming services, and with the Academy Awards just announcing their nominations, I'm sure lots of people are going to go watch it, and I highly encourage anyone to watch it. But it just recontextualizes everything that you learn about him in the movie and what he's experienced after you find out some of the backstory of what happened to him to get him to this point.
And I think that dichotomy between Jesse Eisenberg really planning this trip to really get to the bottom of his history, and then knowing nothing about, or really not being that deeply interested in the individual, was incredibly interesting.
Yeah,
And that Kieran Culkin's character was responding to that on some level.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you have directed and written. I think I read in on your IMDb, you've got five things that have been credited to you. So you say on your website that you've got a list of themes that kind of you gravitate to, and these are things that are important to you. And some of these things: layered characters, family dynamic, youth and healing, art and industry, mental health, social justice, and criminal psychology. So those are heavy topics. Those are things that give you a lot of opportunity to say a lot of different things. So I guess I'm curious, what kind of drew you to those themes when it came to creating your stories and creating your movies?
It's hard to say. I think it again. I think yeah, I think our unconscious plays such a part in creating, and I so it for me it's more something that sort of came through. I mean, I think For example, with Rose's Turn, when I moved from Bloomington Normal to New York City, I hadn't seen homeless people in that on that level before. And, I was at the Actor Studio MFA program, and it's very much about sensitizing your instrument, and you're walking down these streets and you're just feeling and paying attention to everything. And so that play kind of came through, just real life circumstances. And I think for me, it's always starting with sort of an inciting question. It was sort of, really who are these people? How does this happen? What we have so many pat answers, but the individuals, and so talking to them, and, talking to people that, are so mindfully sweeping, and I put that in the movie, like sweeping a square of concrete because that's their home, with a broom, and fixing their home. It was just, you just think, who are they? They have the mind to do that. So what's the real story here? And yeah, so that, I think, social justice. And then when I was in Bloomington, I started a school called Theater School, and originally it started with what they call at-risk youth.
Okay.
And so I worked with a lot of people that were, had been incarcerated and had been addicted and had all these problems, and, doing acting workshops. And it was, there was never a person that I couldn't understand emotionally. So I think marginalized people that are marginalized are always create a lot of empathy in me. And I'm always curious. I never think, what are they doing? I'm always thinking, what happened? What is the origin of this? Because it could be any of us, right? So it's like, how did this, why are you behaving this way? And I think human behavior is every, actor, writer, and directors, well, not every, but most, you're very interested in human behavior. And I'm just obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with psychology, and the fact that everyone is a human being, and kind of reaching them. I really loved seeing that there was a healing for people through these workshops. Yeah.
I definitely saw that with the three movies that I saw, where you have three pockets of individuals. So with Rose's Turn, you have the homeless or unhoused, or however
Unhoused.
we want to refer to that today. And that perception of this couple, they want to just genuinely help, but they're not sure what they're getting themselves into in this situation. Then you have in Faith, you have this group of teenagers, or this, like, I don't want to call them kids because that feels like it's trivializing it, but they're young adults who have all experienced some type of trauma, and there seems to be a bit of a stigma with mental health and how everybody's in a different place, and you have some dealing with it in different ways, and some, like, even the doctor in that group is trying his best to corral all the his patients who are in widely different spots in their mental health journey. And then you have in I Heard Sarah, it's addiction, and the plights of a rock star who is a drug addict, and you're not exactly sure how he got to that point and how he is in so much pain, even though he's famous and everybody thinks that this is all like either like a cry for help, or just, that's just what rock stars do. But there's real pain there, and there's real trauma there that isn't addressed because it's not something that he like. The opening of that movie is that he leaves, or he escapes the rehab clinic that he's in. And I definitely see what you're talking about with those kind of things, or those kind of throughputs in all three of those movies are definitely present there. And it's something that I know it's important to you, and it definitely shows in all of your movies that I at least got to watch. so far.
I really appreciate, an interviewer that takes such a deep look at the actual work. It's wonderful. Yeah, and I guess my feeling is also about the image that people want to portray versus actually helping. I mean, we can know, like the couple in Rose's Turn, or we can know, or the people, the fans of Ian Ford, and the parents of the kids in Faith. I mean, we can know a lot, but is or write a check or put them in a rehab, but how are we really helping? How are we really connecting? We want to bury our heads in the sand to people's problems. And in my work with the youth in recovery, and then more recently with adults in recovery, all they need is someone not to bury themselves in the healing is really about not someone just saying, I hear you, I understand. But no one will do that because the parents and the families and the society doesn't want to look flawed. And especially in this culture now where there are great things about social media and there are really shitty things about social media, especially for growing minds. It's having real mental health effects because I'm supposed to be something other than I am, is just ripping the humanity and the empathy out of, which is something that everyone has. So yeah, I mean, the healing that happens in these workshops just by encouraging people to tell the truth, sometimes it ends up being for the first time. And it's not, and then that's really for the sake of art. You want a really truthful performance, you want, right, no matter the genre, but it also helps the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did want to ask you specifically about faith because you have
Who is your
all
favorite character?
it's tough because there's Faith herself because she's experiencing a pretty big trauma in her life and she's putting her guard up pretty good because she's also the newest in this group and feeling the need to acclimate herself. And it's not shocking that the first person that she gravitates to is the UCLA baseball player because she admits she was a cheerleader as well and they just have a connection. But I think the person that I would consider my favorite, I suppose, it was the girl who shared her story about her experience at a party. And I won't give away what happens to her, but she spends a good amount of the movie talking about God and talking about religion, and that's something that can rub people the wrong way. And it's a heavy topic for a lot of people. And the way that she treats some of the people in the group because of the way that they act or the way that they look or the way that they dress, but then once you kind of peel back the layers and you kind of understand what happens to her, it's devastating to that. And there was a vulnerability there in that performance. And it recontextualizes a little bit of what happens at the beginning because I love how you start this movie with them with puppets. And it at first felt a little silly when they do that. But the doctor, and I apologize for not knowing all their names,
That's
but
okay. That's
but the doctor,
Ryan Donahue. Yeah.
yeah, but the doctor, he's talking about how it's subsexual with puppetry as a way that people can feel that they can express themselves in a way that they normally couldn't just by talking in a group. So at first, when they're in it, it's a handful of them in a group, and they're talking to each other through puppetry. But then it kind of shifts a little bit because she talks about some things that happened at the party, but you don't exactly know what she's talking about. But then she tells her story, and it's really moving. It's really really powerful. The Yeah, I would say it's her, and I was not expecting that to be the case because I kind of struggle a little bit with individuals who are very much in your face about God. And this isn't to say that I'm not spiritual or faithful, but I guess the best metaphor is it's kind of like a hey, get off my lawn type of situation where I'm like, let me go on my journey to find spirituality my own way. But when you learn a little bit about why someone is so devoted to their faith, then it changes your perception. And then you find a way to just be okay with it because they're using it as a way to find that humanity again and use that as a means of healing. And there's something really powerful about that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that Maya was played by Valentina Mura, and I was so proud of her. She was really young. She was only, I think, 17, and she's overcompensating with this religiosity. And as you say, it just really puts everyone off, and then you sort of realize why she's covering with that. Yeah.
Yeah. There was also something about the doctor that I found very compelling. I wish, and this is where the wish to just learn more about what happens afterwards, because he makes that phone call at the end, get that big smile, and don't know what happens after that. And that's kind of the beauty of making a film with an ending that doesn't have like a definitive ending. It lets me as an audience member kind of figure out what I hope the story would be down the road, because the interaction that he has at the beginning with, I believe, Padma, is that how you pronounce it? She's the art an art therapist, and it was really sweet because his whole thing that he's saying, he's asking all of these kids, what is something that's bigger than yourself that you can that gets you up in the day and that you can kind of hold on to. And hearing the way that all these kids answer that, and then to find out his, it's always good when we as people, like I'm somebody who struggles with mental health as well, because I feel like everybody to some extent or another struggles with something mental health related. But
Of course.
it's also kind of comforting to know that a doctor can take a look at his what he's trying to do with his patients and practices what he preaches as well.
Yes, yes. And that was the beautiful thing that I researched and learned in those recovery programs, because everyone that was working there was also in recovery. So I love that you picked up on that. And I'm really glad that you want more, because I'm creating a series
Oh, really?
from this. Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
That's exciting. I would definitely just keep me posted on that because I definitely want to learn more.
Thank you.
Because between this and I Heard Sarah, which the ending of I Heard Sarah was again not quite not what I was expecting at all. And but the ending with Ian playing that song just felt like the perfect way to end it. And it's a great song, and given everything that he's gone through, and it just feels like he's starting his healing journey, it didn't get lost on me that when he goes up to the bar he asked for a water instead. And there's something quite powerful about that, given everything that you know about what he's experienced in the throughout the course of the whole movie. So I there was a lot in I Heard Sarah that was just really powerful, really enjoying. And that's where also the family dynamics piece, because family, I'm sure, is it's a relative term because it could be the family that you have that's blood or the family that you make along the way, the family you choose in a way. And a band is a perfect way to contextualize that because they're together all the time, they experience a lot, and particularly the band that you wrote about, which is they started with nothing. They started handing out flyers, best kept secret in LA. And how come nobody's taking my flyers? And I don't see a point in handing out these flyers because nobody's going to come to the show. And then the joy that they experienced when they said, we made it. And there the ups and downs throughout. throughout all of that was just interesting to see where you took a lot of those characters. And yeah, like what kind of for I Heard Sarah, what was kind of the what just walk me through your process in terms of kind of just coming up with that particular story.
The I was really interested in the relationship between addiction and fame, but the story was brought to me. It was the Adiniev who played Ian Ford. He brought me a story and said, "Can we make this into a film?" So it was a personal story, and then we extrapolated, this idea that what happens when someone comes from a broken family, has these issues with addiction, but happens to be incredibly talented and young, and then they hit, how is it gonna affect them? So it was following that, to its end.
Yeah. It kind
But
of
really following it back to his what he loved about music, and back to his own, the fame pulled him away from his values, like you said, his family, his music, even on a lot of levels, and so he had to go back to the bare bones. And I think a lot of people lose that if they're not ready for fame.
oh yeah, absolutely. And I think the character of Josh was a great way to kind of counterbalance a little bit everything that Ian's going through, because Josh as a character, he makes a choice about what's going on in his life, and it's something that puts him into conflict with Ian. And then you don't want to like trivialize and just say like, oh, he was just jealous that Ian was getting more famous. No, there's more layers to that. And once you kind of find out a little bit more about all some of the different reasons why he left the band, it really helps kind of balance a little bit more about Ian's struggles, and then also kind of gives a little bit more clarity about Josh as a person.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, he stole his girl,
Yeah.
he stole his love. And that's so primal if you're in a band of three people. And it was this rift that, and it really makes me think about, when you're in a work relationship and it's working, it usually is a rift that is, in retrospect, you don't realize how important that initial bond was, and how much you should value that. And yeah, there's a lot of regrets in the film that I really got, I picked up from the story that was brought to me, and tried to reflect the best I could. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit about Now or Never? Because that's one that I couldn't figure out a way to watch it. And I read the premise on IMDb. It was really interesting because it has to do with anxiety. And I think right now anxiety is just running rampant. Not
Oof.
not just like in the US, but just kind of around the world. And just it's a combination of everything that's happened lately and kind of the direction that the world is going in, that anxiety is just at an all-time high. So kind of just tell me a little bit more about, what kind of drove you to write and make Now or Never.
And I'll send it to you, because it's just such a great piece. It was a play here written by Natalie Nicole Dressel, and then the producer asked me to adapt it into a screenplay. And having just the one actor play all the characters was super intriguing to me. And it was during COVID, so it was, you are alone, and so the voices in your head really blow up and become your company, and really loud, and that's really anxiety provoking. And then it's about sort of soul searching and going, are these really what I believe about myself or not? And that was a really cool project because it was all women, and I hadn't been on a set. It was all women or non-binary. It was, during the pandemic. It's crazy how that it hasn't got, I don't think they distributed that, but it won the Rising Star Award at Paramount here, which was just such an honor. And it was such a surprise, Mike, because when you're creating something during COVID in a vacuum, you just I didn't you don't even know if it's going to see the light of day. So I was really, really proud, and it was really deep, deep work that I did with that with Covey, the lead actress, because she had to fully embody three different characters. And so it really was about, yeah, just sort of coming to terms with, okay, all of us are seeing new parts of ourselves, and maybe we don't like those parts, because we're inside
Mhm.
and going crazy. And then, what can that teach us, and how does it surprise us? And yeah, that's what it was about.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd love to see it because if just judging by the premise alone with anxiety and the fact that you've got one person that's just taking on all of this and the fact that it was made during COVID as well helps color a little bit about what that premise is about because that anxiety during COVID was, I'm sure, just for certain people just at an all-time high because
Yes.
because let's just call it what it is because they're like during COVID there was a group of people who decided that my individual rights trump the greater good of individuals. And when you have such a stark contrast with something like that with COVID, where now's the perfect time to unite and try to figure this out. And all we have now is division. I can't think of a better time to make something about anxiety than during COVID.
Yeah, yeah, and it was, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, I didn't think things would get more anxiety prone than that ever, and now it kind of feels like with the fires and the new administration, it's even higher. So we're being challenged somehow, Mike. I don't know how, but we're definitely meant to figure something out.
Def Definitely so, but you strike me as someone who's you're gonna find a way to use your voice in a positive way and continue to make the things that you want to. And you mentioned before how, like Now or Never may not gotten distributed. And I read up a lot about how these studios now are the way that they treat people who create and creators who make content, who make movies, and they put something on a streaming service, and then they write it off for tax purposes. And it feels like it's just a new era in terms of dealing with studios. And how can you trust that they're going to have your work in their best interest or in your best interest?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's why this year's lineup, because Sean Baker, I mean, he's a complete original and has just been making independent films. And same with Mona and Brady Corbett with The Brutalist. And
Mhm.
they're just, no matter what, they're going to find a way to tell their story, and for much less money than others will, and the story wins, somehow. So that's where we have to find hope. Same with Baby Girl, same with The Substance. I mean, these are not the kind of films we usually see at the Oscars. They're not huge studio films. They're really independent films. So yeah, I mean, I've always been an idealist, but I just love independent film. I mean, I think A24. I think there are some places that it's hard. It's hard when you have to just concentrate on staying in control of what you can, which is doing the best work you can, and then trying to find partners that actually care about the same things you do on for whatever reason. A story with The Last Showgirl. I don't know if you heard about that with Pam Anderson.
I've heard of the movie, but I didn't. I'm wondering about the story that you're about to
Yeah,
tell.
Gia Coppola sent it to Pamela Anderson's agency and got turned down in 5 minutes. Oh, it's too small for us. We don't want to do that. So she found a way to get the script. I think it was through Pamela Anderson's son to Pamela Anderson, and Pamela Anderson was absolutely delighted and could not wait to do it. And it's a great film and she's great in it. And the thing is, that's, you have to be cognizant of, and I had to learn this, but if one person's bottom line is just money, then you have to be aware of how you proceed with what you're making and who you bring it to. So taking matters into our own hands as filmmakers, I think, is the lesson.
So, in terms of like taking matters into your own hands, I read up a little bit about the studio or the creative direction that you're going, and you created firsthand films, which loved reading about that on your website. Uh, what made you want to start firsthand films versus what you were doing in the relationships that you had with other studios before that?
I didn't start it because I had any relationships with studios that were negative. It was just because my dream, if there are any investors in your audience, my dream is to, my dream would be to just make movie after movie after movie, maybe a few series through my company. I mean, that's always been my dream. Just taking scripts, reading them, getting a small team, making stories I really believe in. And I really trust my taste because every time I believe in something, it does really well. So I just want to be churning out films. That's just really what I just be, that's my dream. And so I've gotten to make 3 so far. And, we'll see what happens with my series. If I, but yeah, I have a couple of projects now, but I just have it there ready to go for when someone brings something to me that I believe in, or for myself. Yeah, I mean, it's just a model that I believe in.
That's fantastic, and that leads me to kind of my next question is how do you define success for yourself? Because success can mean a lot of different things, and especially in something like Hollywood, where money is a big measuring stick when it comes to success, and so is awards prestige. We're in the midst of award season right now. So for you, what does success look like for you?
I do think that's an ever evolving question. But for me it really is just working. Just having the blessings to be working professionally on projects that I believe in is what I want my life to be. It's always been what I wanted my life to be. And to make a living certainly, but it's if you said, you can make a gazillion dollars if you go do this, and I didn't like this, I personally wouldn't do it. So it's, yeah, so that is what it is. I mean, I think again, I just think all you have is your own taste and your own desire and endless curiosity about a story or a character, and then just to be able to do that. I just don't want to ever be stopped from doing that. I just want to have, continue to garner support to be able to keep working. And the awards are funny because they're so political.
Yes, they are.
When I get these awards from film festivals, they're so great because it's sincere, like yourself, everyone watched the film, we're all talking about the films, it was judged in a very sincere way. And you don't always feel that with the awards shows. There can be a lot of subjective reasons that, so I've never cared that much about that as much as I have, like, I like the Spirit Awards. I like the Independent Spirit Awards. But yeah, so my goal isn't, it's always artistic, for better or for worse. It's not like I want to win an Oscar. I mean, I would, everyone wants to win an Oscar, I'm sure, but it's not that. It's just that I have a movie I want to make right now. I have a series I want to make right now. My dream is to make a movie in France, so I have things that I really want to be able to do. And if it's a big studio or a small studio or my studio that makes it happen, is fine as long as it happens.
So, last question I have for you is for anybody out there who is looking at an opportunity to get into the entertainment industry and looking back at your experience, what's like a lesson that you could take away that you would give to anybody else who's striving to get into the entertainment industry?
Well, it's interesting because I'll send you a link. I'm going to offer a Zoom workshop so that people everywhere can take it. And it's to take you through the process of it's for actors, but to take you through the process if you're cast in a role, what you do. And I'm really offering that because I want to start the year with something really empowering for actors. And I didn't want to do it in just LA. I have people from New York and China and all over the place. So I will be giving some of those lessons there. And I think the important thing to remember is that if you were a basketball player or if you were a cello player, you wouldn't be like, oh, I'm just going to go join the NBA or I'm just going to pick up the cello and play a concerto. For some reason, because actors are their own instrument, they forget that they have to keep improving their craft and they don't know how much work the good actors do. And that has a lot to do with just media presentation and stuff like that. But I coach some of those actors. I know what they're doing behind the scenes. So it's really about practice and letting it be about the work itself. Like, if you love comedy, just be doing as much comedy as you can, whether it's in classes or performing. If you love, I remember Mark Ruffalo, who we all know now, but I remember him talking about, for 10 years, he was just out here with his buddies putting on plays on Hollywood Boulevard. And someone saw him 10 years later and offered him an off-Broadway show. But it's work begets work. And the better you are, the more practiced you are, the better your chances are of getting opportunities. But you have to be good. It's a myth that you don't have to be good. I mean, it's a crazy thing, but for acting, people, it's not just about looks or charm or whatever. You really have to be able to act. So the better actor you are, the more you're going to work.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, there is that perception of acting because I hate to say it, but isn't that kind of like a Hollywood story that you're plucked from obscurity and you make it in Hollywood with like a grand role and then you're gonna have a career the rest of the rest of your life. But for every person that gets that opportunity, there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of other people who are hustling every day to make it happen. And
And it's also not the studio system anymore. I mean, those stories come from the 1930s where Rita Hayworth is sitting at the soda shop and someone comes in. But then when they got in the studio system, they had to do dance lessons and acting lessons. And that myth that you're talking about, it's not real. But the scary thing for me is that you don't go into acting because you want to be famous. Go into acting because you love acting,
yeah,
because very few people become famous, but you can work.
yeah, and that's sound advice for anybody out there that it sounds a little obvious, but it is also just sound advice to just give anybody out there that believe it or not, the harder you work, and there's also a difference between working hard and working yourself so hard that you're getting yourself sick. You have to work smart about it and you have to hone your craft in what's best for you. And something that really resonated with what you said is like do something because you love it, not because you have a specific end result that you're looking for. And fame is a very easy thing to point out and be like, I want to be famous, but the path to fame and the path to a lot of like tangible goals is never linear and it's never going to be in the way that you think that it is. So,
And I just want to say one more thing that is a little less obvious, which is that a lot of people are gonna tell you this is the way to be a writer or a director or in the entertainment industry. That doesn't exist.
oh no.
Everyone's making up their own way. So that can deaden your spirit just go for it. Find a way to, make what you want to make. There isn't a way.
And I appreciate you saying that because I'm a parent. I have two kids, and the first thing that a lot of people encourage you to do, read the baby books. I was like, those baby books, it says you need to do things in a specific way, but my thought always reading these baby books is like, wait a second, this isn't going to teach me how to raise my kids specifically. It's just generalizing. And then you figure out pretty quick as a parent, well, those baby books helped with some general stuff, but it doesn't get into the nitty gritty of how I take care of this child. And there's something kind of admirable that you got to forge your own path and you got to figure things out for what's best for you. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing with your films, with all the different amazing things that you're doing. And I so thank you for your time tonight. I greatly appreciate it, and looking forward to seeing what else you come out with because I'm a fan of your work, and I'm looking forward to just seeing what else you come up with. So thank you very much for your time. Do you have anything else that you want to plug, or anywhere that we can send our audience members to just learn more about you, your films, and anything that you got going on?
Well, thank you. This was such a meaningful and wonderful interview, and I just loved it. It was really a conversation, and I really appreciate that. Yes, please go to my website. I think it's KymberlyHarris.me, and please
Mhm.
go to Amazon, and maybe we can share the links to the films that you
Yep,
so
I will.
eloquently
Yep,
talked about.
I will absolutely.
And I'll send you the link to that workshop in case any Chicago people want to jump on, and I'll keep you posted on my projects, and hopefully sooner than later we'll be talking about one of those.
Awesome, awesome.
Yes.
Greatly appreciate it, and looking forward to, just continuing to root from afar and also root for you in whatever way that I can.
Back at you. Thank you.
Okay.